Welcome to Build Your Best Business. I'm your host, Eric Holtzclaw. Build Your Best Business focuses on the entrepreneurial journey. What does it take to successfully grow, manage, and eventually exit a business? I'm joined today by Kim Carpenter. She is the founder of World Changing Women. I like it when someone chooses a company name that has, a lot of emphasis and a lot of purpose behind it. So Kim, thanks for joining us.
Absolutely. It's so great to be here, Eric. Thank you.
And so tell us a little bit about World Changing Women. What's your company, your organization?
Yeah, so World Changing Women is a support ecosystem for women entrepreneurs who want to make a big difference in the world through their business. So some of them are for-profit businesses that have a social impact connected to them. Some of them are nonprofit businesses who really want to use entrepreneurial skills to ramp that up and not just rely on donations. And some of them are actually corporate thought leaders, women who, let's say, want to be the next Sheryl Sandberg, right? So they want to have a side hustle that really capitalizes on their thought leadership, and they have a powerful message to bring into the world.
Very nice. I like that. And really needed thing like when I started this podcast, it was around the concept of what is the ecosystem? What do entrepreneurs need? What are the resources that are missing, and trying to tap into that, because entrepreneur, and I've looked through your history, so I know you and I are sort of, around the same age. And so earlier when we started entrepreneurship, it wasn't a cool thing to do, right? There wasn't as a kid that the movie, The Big Chill, one of the friends in it is an entrepreneur, and his friends say, that means you don't have a job, right?
Yes.
So,
yes, exactly.
And so as we become this and started to do it, having the right ecosystem in place is so important to make it work. So have you always been an entrepreneur? How did you start out? What was at the beginning of your career?
I really haven't. And I kind of fell into it, I think, because I'm stubborn. But I started out in corporate advertising and spent 9 years in New York City in the ad world, and actually started there when the internet was just beginning. So I was my first job in New York was a little agency of 20 people started by these guys from Chiat, and I think they were in their 60s, and they're like, we need these things called websites, and I'm not really sure what they are. And so, I was late 20s coming in, had some experience with graphic design and web design, and it was just the perfect time. And so I really quickly climbed the corporate ladder for 9 years, kind of hopping around to different companies, as many of us were doing at that time. And then, 9/11 happened, the tech crash happened after that. And so I found myself unemployed going, okay, well, what do I want to do now? Right. And life is good, right? Like I'd had all this success and had some savings, luckily, and just really said, okay, I think I want to be a freelancer. So that's how I actually started. We didn't call ourselves entrepreneurs at that time, because entrepreneurs were this like holy kind of thing, right? It's like, oh, are you Richard Branson? No, well then you're not an entrepreneur.
Yeah, and it's weird because it was like that, and now the word means almost too much. So it's kind of gone in a kind of an interesting pendulum. But yeah, you're right. Back then, totally understand. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like I wouldn't dare say that now, and it's true. And now everyone's an entrepreneur, and what does that really mean?
Right.
But I fell into that, and so I just got some freelance gigs. I got some consulting gigs, and then I found that, well, I really need a website because I'm getting all of these requests to do marketing consulting and digital marketing consulting for people and branding projects, and myself and so many of my other friends were also laid off after the tech crash. And so we were just collaborating. We were just forming natural partnerships and strategic partnerships and companies together, and then pitching big projects together. And it was awesome. And so then I was like, okay, well, I guess it's called Kim Carpenter Consulting. Threw a website up, and so I just kind of fell into it, really.
Yeah, that's so funny. You and I do have very similar stories. I was building professional services organizations for some companies out of Silicon Valley right about the time the 9/11 crash happened. And it was when the dot-bomb was occurring. And so they were doing, layoffs and letting whole divisions go quarter by quarter. My division was held for another 3 months. And I traveled 150,000 miles a year. So I basically sat for 3 months. But they were sending me good money at that time. And I had the same decision. It was like, well, do I build something new or do I try to go find somewhere? And of course, I started a company. So took that savings. I had 18 months if I had decided to find something else, and 6 if I started a company. So I started a company. That's so much smarter, right?
It makes total sense.
Right.
Exactly.
Yeah, but at least you were in control. So as you started to get into kind of the concept of World Changing Women, like when did you found that organization and what was the emphasis of that?
Well, it's so funny. I have had that URL for 7 years. And, like you said in the beginning, it's a pretty daring name to claim. And so I think, honestly, I just wasn't ready to do it. So
Yeah.
I've been operating under Kim Carpenter Consulting. I had another partnership. As many of us entrepreneurs do, started one thing, that didn't work out. Okay, what's the next thing, right? Like we're just always iterating
Right.
on the last thing to get to the next best thing. And so I had a partnership close about 1.5 years ago, and it was like, okay, now what? And I said, I'm just going to do it. So it actually was just this year in 2018 that brand and that corporation was started. But it's been coming for a really long time.
Yeah. And that is how it happens. It's like the overnight success, 10 years in the making. Like you've been thinking about this thing, like the company I started in 2002, I had been considering since 95.
Right.
So it took 7 years it took 9/11. It took several things to get me to go, okay, this is what we're going to do. I mean, if I'm ever going to do it, I might as well go ahead and do it, right? Because it always just stays as an idea. So as you start to put this together, and you've got an event coming up soon, yes? Around the event?
I do. Yeah.
That's a courageous thing to undertake, putting an event together.
I'm a little bit like that. It's like, okay, let's put a stake in the ground way up there. It seems like way up there in the future, and then just make it happen.
Yeah.
And I think that's part of being an entrepreneur as well, is getting more comfortable with taking those risks and, just claiming I'm going to do this, right? Because why not?
Right.
So yeah, I'm super excited about that. It's coming up November 1st, 2nd, and 3rd here in Austin, Texas. And it's going to be an incredible group of women coming together to really support each other. Part of that support ecosystem is the community of women. And then we have some fantastic speakers coming in, really teaching around lean business and marketing development. Like, how do you do this in a smart way? How do you really vet your idea in a really smart way before you dump a whole bunch of money into marketing or hiring a bunch of people? It's really that early stage founder type of process. If you're in the traditional startup world, that's what I think they would call it.
Very nice, very nice. And Austin is a great little city to get to spend some time in. So it is. Nashville and a couple of others. So as you start to think about, World Changing Women and the organization itself, and I shared with you that I started this podcast and started in 2012. And I started because I saw a lot of people becoming entrepreneurs, and, it was considered this glamorous thing, and it's not.
Oops.
Yeah, I know. I was like, this is really not that great. So you need to know what you're getting into, and you need to understand a little bit behind the scenes, where it's not the Richard Branson, like we hear about them later. You don't hear about the early days of some of those things that they went through. So in that ecosystem, because that was my same mission, was, well, what's missing in the ecosystem? What are some things you're learning that women need that you think is missing today?
Yeah, I think that we're really learning that we need a space to crowdsource the solutions and the resources and things that we need, as opposed to coming into some of the structures that are created for entrepreneurs. It's a very set system, and it's like, you have to follow this and do it my way. And if you don't do it my way, you're not going to be successful. And people are trying to like cram a square peg into a round hole. Sometimes it's not natural for them. And so I think we're seeing the fallout of some of these bigger programs that aren't working for people. I think that's why we're seeing some of these things decline. So in the World Changing Women support ecosystem, we're constantly doing inquiry and asking people, what do you need? What's happening now? What are you being challenged by now? And really feeding that back, really strong feedback loop to bring that information back in so we can it really is like this living, breathing ecosystem. I love that word, right? Because it makes me think about the forest ecosystem, right? It's like you've got the birds and the animals and they fertilize this and the trees provide X amount of shade, right? And so we need to create that. I think just keep looking and keep iterating and making it better and better by asking people what's working, what's not working.
And interestingly, if you think about ecosystem, entrepreneur often has almost a cowboy mentality to it, or a pioneer. You're the first one out there and you got to know how to build the cabin, and you got to know, and I would die. Like if I were a pioneer, I would be dead. Like I'm not surviving the apocalypse. It's not happening. Was born at the right time. None of that. I don't know how to do any of those things. Right. So I rely on the ecosystem, and more people do than sort of we see, because there's this thing that when you become an entrepreneur, all of a sudden you're expert at all these things. Like a lot of my clients come to me and they're like, hey, I got a secret. I don't understand how to read a P&L, or I don't know. And I'm like, it's okay. I'll help you through that, right? But they are expected, because they're entrepreneurial, to all of a sudden become magically some kind of Superman or Supergirl or overnight, and that's not how it happens. It's not how it happens.
It's not. It's not how it happens. And it's funny because I talk to a lot of people who have an MBA.
Yeah.
They're coming out of school with an MBA, and it's like, oh, you got an MBA, and they're like, I have no idea how to start a business.
Yeah, the funny thing with MBAs is it teaches you to be risk adverse. I mean, what I've learned, and you may have one, so if I'm offending you, but
I don't.
So it does teach you to be risk adverse. You've gone through all these programs where you've watched large companies and you have to make the spreadsheet work and all that. And I've had MBAs who've worked for me in companies, and I've had to tell them, stop looking at the spreadsheet. Like, we got to follow some gut here. It's not going to be clean. Like, we're going to have to do that. And I think I saw some that in your background or your bio. It's not always, it's not a clean thing. Like, this happens very organically.
That's right. It does. And what I love about having an ecosystem with other people who are on a similar journey is that we can confess those things, like, I don't know how to do this, right? Let me raise my hand and go, I need some help here. And creating a safe container for people to really show up and be messy and vulnerable. There's tears in entrepreneurship. It's not like there's no crying in baseball, right? Like, there's crying.
So much crying.
And so I think we need to be there for each other and with each other to help and lift each other up in this. There's always going to be some competition. So I don't want to say totally non-competitive, because there's people who do the same thing, right? And
but it's a big, support each other. Yeah, and it's a big ocean, right? Like, I mean, how many often are you really going up against somebody else for the same deal? I mean, it's just not. Yeah. There's a reason why they would pick. Well, we're going to go to a commercial break, and when we get back, I want to talk a little bit more about some things that you've learned, maybe how the event's going to unfold, some of those types of things, and some of your future plans for world-changing women. We're talking today with Kim Henderson. She's the founder of World Changing Women. You're listening to Build Your Best Business. I'm your host, Eric Holtzclaw. We'll be back in just a minute.
Eric, tell us about Laddering Works.
So Laddering Works is a company that helps other businesses in one of two ways.
Okay.
So your company is either growing and you're not exactly sure how to keep up. So you need to scale operations, maybe raise some money, those kind of things.
So growing too fast.
Growing too fast. Okay. Growing too fast. You got kind of structural, you walk in every day, there's a fire. You've been doing it longer than 3 years or 1,000 days, and you still feel like you can't step away from the business and take a vacation. So we help companies on that side. So sort of operational support, looking at their financing, seeing if there's a way that we can help them, get to the next level. Or you're a company that's not doing any marketing at all. So you are maybe stalled. Your business has gotten to a certain level. You make a certain amount of money every year, but you've never gotten above that. And we come in and build marketing structure. So both of them are operational at the end of the day. It's about creating a process and a way to approach it that's strategic. It's that owners don't often know how to do both of those. So they're really good at sales, which means they may need operational structure because they're out signing more customers than they know what to do with, or they've built a beautiful product that's the best kept secret. And so they need somebody to come in and help them market that product. And so that's the kind of businesses we look for. We come in as a stopgap, and we work with a company for somewhere around 12 to 18 months typically, solve those problems for them and leave them better than we found them. And we're back. You're listening to Build Your Best Business. I'm your host, Eric Holtzclaw. I'm talking today with Kim Carpenter. Wow, Kim Carpenter, founder of World Changing Women. If you've watched my show at all, Kim, you'll know that I'm terrible with names. I just screw them up all the time, which I think I can get away with because I'm Eric Holtzclaw. So there you go, right? So, so we're talking about her organization, World Changing Women, and sort of her background in marketing and digital and those types of things. She has an event coming up in November in Austin, which is an awesome little town to go hang out in and spend some time. Good music scene. It is Texas, but it's different Texas. I think people think of it's just different. The topography and the city, it's a beautiful little city. So as you've gone through kind of putting this together, choosing who you were going to have speak, like because you say you really like turned the organization on at the beginning of the year. Is that right?
That's right.
Okay. Yeah. So talk to me about, like I'm going to do an event. Well, that doesn't just happen. Like there's some stuff around building an event. And I work with companies often who think about that as a marketing thing or a way to do outreach. There's some stuff behind that. So how did you decide what that agenda was going to look like and how you were going to work it?
Yeah. Well, I do have a background in constructing events, creating curriculum, doing the traditional 3-day live event, enrollment model. And the reason why I wanted to do an event is because I love being in physical presence with people. Right. And I feel like, especially as women, we have such a desire to connect. Mm-hmm. It's really strong. And so there's nothing like being in a room together for a few days where we're really getting to deepen our learning and our connection with each other and truly our connection with ourselves, right? So that we can be our best selves, so we can overcome any of our inner obstacles and hurdles that we have on our entrepreneurial journey. So it was really a selfish thing. Like, I want to be with people. Yeah.
And it's really important. I mean, I was working with a company this week and we were doing, it's an operational client. So I help them with the operational structure, and they have a real concern around corporate culture. And one of the facilitators for this was saying, hey, normally at the end of the year, we do a 2-day, it's off-site, we have the day, then we spend the evening and we go to dinner and all that. And they were very adverse to it. Like, they're worried about corporate culture, but they were very adverse about taking the team off-site. And they're like, because I'm an outside consultant to them and would have to go. And they said, well, I'm certain you wouldn't want to go. I'm like, no, I think it's a really good idea. So if you're worried about corporate culture, like, get people out of the office, and not just for lunch, like, do something else, because that's when you hear and find the real people,
That's right. Yeah. And I think that's so important. I know for myself and the people that I work with, there's not a big separation between life and business. Yeah. I think especially as an entrepreneur, like, we live, eat, and breathe it, right? Yeah, and so it's like, I am who I am in my business, the same as who I am outside of my business. And I want to be known, and I want to know people, and I want to know who my clients really are and create those connections and relationships with them. I think that's the biggest thing in business, is creating relationships and having real authentic conversations, and in the marketing too, Yeah. But just going back to the event, that's why I wanted to have it. And I have such an incredible pool of people who are amazing speakers and trainers and authors and world-changing women. And so I also wanted to create this place to give all of them a platform to really speak and have us all benefit from that. And that is part of the mission of World Changing Women. Actually, that's a little bit of the down the road vision, but I really see World Changing Women being this like platform that we're all standing upon, a marketing platform even. So I have dreams of, video series where I'm featuring world-changing women, and podcast series, and you're doing such an incredible job with this one, so I'm definitely modeling you. but I think it's important for us to also give everybody a way to be heard. That's the biggest thing. If we're going to change the world, we need to be able to be heard and be seen and be known in the market. So it really fits in perfectly with the offering and what people are wanting.
Yeah. It's and giving. I like the whole concept of being heard, being able to tell the story. That's what we want to hear. Is what is that? How does it connect? How does it impact me? How can I take something from it? Right? How do I take something from it that then I can use to encourage me and kind of move me along? So as I was talking a little bit about future for world changing women. So it sounds like it's not just an event. Like you got some big ideas, some big vision here.
I do. I see this this system where we have events, we have live events, and there's also a membership program. So I ran my membership this year with 25 founding members, and Eric, it was crazy. It was like the easiest thing I've ever enrolled in. I would just walk around talking about, okay, I'm going to create this membership community of women, and we're going to crowdsource solutions and resources, and we're going to really support each other, and we're going to decide what do we want to learn, and then we're going to bring people in to teach us those things. And I would tell people this, and they're like, can I come in?
Right.
Can I give you money? Can I be the first person to sign up? Literally, someone was like, can I pay you right now? Because I want to be known as the first person in the World Changing Women membership.
Wow, that's
I was
nice.
like, oh, I think I've got something here.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, and so I don't like to talk in generalities because I feel like that we do that too much in this world, like that we divide people. But if you talk in generalities, one of the things that you'll hear about male versus female is that men, and it's the whole joke about like we won't ask for directions or whatever. Like we know what we're doing, we know where we're going, and we're sort of can act and pretend more independently. And women have a tendency to be more like, oh, I don't know what I'm doing. I need to ask somebody else. I need to be reassured, right? So, and that's also probably why when you talk about the incubator models, like some of those incubator models are structured more around a male perspective, right? You got to figure out how to do it, and you got to be kind of out there in the cowboy world and know how to kind of handle it. But at the end of the day, you and I both know it's the collaborative environments that work better, right? That's the thing. Like there's no difference really between personal and work. Like you are who you are, and accepting people and being able to collaborate with them and tap into the best, or decide that maybe they aren't the best. Like that's not who you need to work with. It's such an important part of it.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. I love that that you're talking about the accelerator or the incubator model, because I think there's two models going on in this entrepreneurial world. One is that traditional incubator accelerator. That happens a lot in Austin because it's very tech oriented, and it's just we want to get VC funding, and we want to grow this as fast as possible, sell it as fast as possible for as much money as possible. And then there's women. A lot of women, especially in my community, they're thinking, this is my life's work. This is my legacy. And I want to do this until I die, and then maybe hand it off to people, or, till I get older in my 80s. Right. Like they're really, right? It's like, this is a long game for them. And they're often seeking out more of like mastermind programs with a guru that they want to model and learn from. And I think that inside both of those models, there's incredible gifts, right? Another reason why I wanted to come together in physical presence is because I'm seeing what's happening in the accelerator models where people get to come for, 2 or 3 weeks to Austin, and they work at this Capital Factory co-working space, and they're together every day. And at the end of it, hands down, I ask them, what did you get out of it? And they say connection.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's an important point that you make about your business, because one of the first things I do when I start working with a new organization is they'll bring me in if they're growing faster than they expected or not at all. And, I start off with the end. Like, where do you want to go, right? Are we selling this? Is it a lifestyle? And often they've never been asked that question. They've never thought about it. Like, they get in the car, and I use the analogy of, like, you and I are both going on a skiing trip, but I like to water ski and you like to snow ski. And we both think we're going skiing. So we show up with different materials. We get in the car and I'm like, okay, we're headed to the beach. And you're like, no, we're headed to the mountains, right? So those conversations, understanding what you want, and the concept or idea of selling the business is not the one that everybody's looking for. Because I was in Vistage for a long time, and we would have people say, oh yeah, I think I'm going to sell the business. And we're like, okay, well, cool. What are you going to do? Oh, I'm going to go lay on the beach. And we're like, what are you going to do 30 days later? Because there's no way.
Thank you.
There's no way you're doing that the rest of your life, right? I mean, it's just not the way that it works. So that's a healthy way. And most businesses don't sell. Most businesses don't do that. Like, they don't make it, or they become a lifestyle thing. I call them the awkward in between. You know, like they become these teenagers that you've got to figure out what are you going to do with them, right? So a very good, important purpose. So finding out information about the conference. So where should they go? You own the URL, right? So they just go to worldchangingwomen.com?
Yeah, absolutely. They go to worldchangingwomen.live.
.live. Okay. Got it.
.live is the URL, and you can find it from .com as well. It's on the homepage, but that's the event page, worldchangingwomen.live, and it's November 1st through 3rd, and it's going to be just fantastic place for women to come together. Sorry, guys. Someday I'm going to create something with men and women, but
it's okay. So, and in our last minute or so, like, as you think about women CEOs and women entrepreneurs that you're running into, is there one piece of advice? Like, is there one thing that you would tell somebody that they need to think about or consider as they're building their business?
I would say find your tribe.
Find your tribe.
Say find your tribe. Find the group of people that you feel like you can be safe and messy and, really vulnerable with, so you can get all the help that you need. Because, especially if you're changing the world through your business, the world needs you. We need you to do that business.
Well, very nice. Well, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you so much. It was so great to be here today.
So we've been talking today with Kim Carpenter. She is the founder of World Changing Women. She has an event coming up in Austin in November. Make sure you attend if you're a world changing woman. And thanks so much for listening to Build Your Best Business. Until next time, what are you going to do to build your best business?